I know, I know, but hear me out, people, okay? We're going to be reviewing Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Have to be on the list because I'm covering all the other Indiana Jones films. This has to be talked about. Welcome. Before we get into it, please, if you are so kind, let's try to get this video to 100 likes. I just put out my X-Men comic review of Emma Frost. See how many likes I can get through that with you guys. If you are really feeling that story, which is also going to be on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Check me out on my Twitch, twitch.tv/talkativecarl. If you want to join me live as I discuss certain topics or stream video games. I'm currently going through FF16 as we speak. Join my Patreon if you want to be a Patreon member. If you pitching certain reviews that you want me to check out, comic, TV show, movie, or general topic, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/talkativecarl. You can just join at the $1 tier. And of course, you can follow me on my Twitter so you'll know when I'm live. That's at talkativecarl. So, Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, directed by Steven Spielberg again. And of course, reprising his role is Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, Kate Blanchett as Irina Spalko. Didn't even realize that was Kate Blanchett. Probably just really good disguise. Karen Allen reprising her role as Marion Ravenwood. Ray Winston as George McHale. John Hurt as Harold Oxley. Jim Broadbent as Dean Charles Stanforth. And Shia LaBeouf as Mutt Williams. So, yeah, I know this movie isn't all that good, but I figure enough time probably went by where we can, we can look back on it and not be too much in our feelings and just look at it, okay, objectively. Okay, is it bad? Yes. But can we appreciate certain nuances about it that Steven Spielberg was trying to give us at that time? I say yes. There are certain things about it that you can understand where he was driving at. It's not that too dissimilar to how we now look at Batman Forever and Batman and Robin in like a different circumstances now, or even the first two Fantastic Four films or Spider-Man 3. There's just certain things that's like we were too close to it at that time to look at it objectively and look at certain good things without being drowned out by all the mad nerds out in the world. But now, the time we can look back on, okay, let's look at this again through some fresh eyes now. So, this is set in 1957. And of course, at this point in time, Indiana's father passed away and Marcus passed away. We got a new dean at this, he's been like the new dean after Marcus passed away, and now it's like, okay, we got TC's this new batch of kids, and this is during the whole situation during fighting the communists, commies at this time, or the Russians are our enemy now that Nazis aren't not to constantly repeat oneself. Spielberg, obviously felt that at this point, a few years down the line, we can't keep going back to that same well of bad guys. We got to introduce a different bad guy. Who was the bad guy of the 50s and getting into the 60s? It was the Russians. So we got Sparkle here, who pretty much took over this warehouse being protected by U.S. soldiers, and is also housing like this is the same warehouse where they was housing the Ark of the Covenant, which we get a glimpse of here. It was like a little callback here, but they kidnapped Mikhail and Indiana because Indiana was part of this group years ago who was hired secretly to inspect this supposed, well, Indiana couldn't, or at least the other members he was brought in with, couldn't get the full details of why they were being brought in or what they was investigating. But it turns out to be, an alien corpse that they kept housed in this warehouse with all these probably strange mystical artifacts. And of course, this turns out to be, this box it was in turns out to be like a magnetized body. At first you would think it's like a magnetized coffin, but it was actually like the corpse itself, or the bones itself, of this space alien. And that's what is like Area 51 was examining. It was like some kind of crash site years ago. The Russians are trying to, at least Spock herself, who believes in like the psychic plane, and wants the next war to be fought on the psychic plane, which they would be more advantageous in. While because Hitler wanted the supernatural stuff to probably get like the edge in ruling the world, the Russians, or at least Spock herself, want like a more science fiction way of trying to global conquest. And you're trying something different. I can appreciate that. You can't keep going back to the same well over again, because it would get stale. So while Indiana is trying to like make his escape, Mac turns out to be like a traitor. He's working with them this whole time because he has like debts he needs to get paid off. So he's working with these Russians to get money, and he was very money grubbing. So Indiana is trying to fight his way out. Of course, he's rusty. He's trying to use the whip to like swing off off the rafter, but it he ain't played it out right, and he falls back. I get it. He's like not. Even at this time when this movie came out, it was he was Indy's not like a young man anymore. So he fighting his way out of this warehouse, having to be near this like hidden bunker where they're testing rocket thrusters, because it's like the space race at this point. While like on this little thruster thing, and yeah, the CGI roads, and I don't want to address that because why they're there, Lord knows. But he, trying to run away from being recaptured, he runs into this seemingly town, and realizing it's all fake, and it's like a testing site to test out a nuclear bomb. And lo and behold, they whoever like far off site that was setting this off, yeah, once they set off, it like Indy had like 5 to 10 seconds or something like that before it goes off, and it's like he wasn't going to get very far. He even tried to run towards like the bad guys looking for him. Of course, they drove off without him, but they get caught up in the blast anyway, because they even cars like that probably didn't have that extra kick like most cars do today, or even in the 80s. But he went inside a lead line refrigerator, and yes, we all know A, it's a death trap, and B, would not protect anybody from a nuclear blast. He would have been dead, if not by the blast itself, definitely during the radiation when he got out of that thing, if he got out of that thing. That's why they don't make lead line refrigerators anymore. So he got picked up by the FBI after he got hosed off, and they're questioning him, thinking he might be a turncoat. And because of the investigation, he ended up losing his job at the university that he always been at. So he's now like considering, like, you know, moving to London, picking up a educator job there. But then he ends up meeting up with this kid named Mutt, this greaser, Shia LaBeouf plays. Now, I want to address this here and now while we're on the subject. You can say what you will, but I thought it was I still think it was not an issue casting Shia LaBeouf in this role. Reason I'm saying this, because to be fair, at the time, Shia LaBeouf was that it guy. It was not too long after that movie Holes that he was in that everybody was raving about, because that's why Steven Spielberg picked him, because, you know, he was so good in that. But prior to that, he was in the Even Stevens TV show, which was his big breakout moment, and he was like a great actor in that. You know, people who grew up in like the 90s and early 2000s, well, primarily the early 2000s when Even Stevens was like a big deal. We always, you know, love the Stevenson's kids, and like, of course, Shia LaBeouf was psyched to be brought on board to be in an Indiana Jones film. The guy, you know, messed up a rotator cuff and stretched out his, you know, groin, you know, doing certain stunts, and all he got back was, like, you know, negativity of his portrayal. Was it a great performance? I should say, you know, probably not. But we've seen Shia LaBeouf with other stuff besides this. You know, to be fair, it's only this and the Michael Bay Transformers films that really kind of sullied the goodwill that Shia LaBeouf accumulated with the fan base. Because everything else he's been in was really good stuff. Like, I liked him in Constantine and I, Robot. I liked him in Holes. I liked him in Even Stevens. There was this like thriller movie that he was in called Disturbia. I liked him in that. I only seen that movie like once or twice on TNT. I know it was on TNT. And it's like he was like a good part, like one of the best parts in that. So he is a great actor. And I'm pretty sure there was like more recent stuff he's been in that I wasn't, because I know there was some kind of indie project he was in a year or two ago that people liked him in. So it was like, he can act. It is the same thing we did with Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, or Andrew Garfield with Spider-Man. For a snapshot, we all came down hard on these actors. Same thing with Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson, because they was in projects that weren't very good, or at the very least weren't very written well. So we put the blame on the actor, not realizing they're actually very good actors, or we forget they've been good in other stuff. If it was their breakout role or whatever, but they get torn to shreds, and it isn't until the past handful of years where we see all these actors coming back again in better written projects, and they show their acting skills to the fullest, and we have to, take our foot out of our mouths after so much crap we gave them so many years ago. And so I think Shia LaBeouf should get that same grace, especially if he gets cast in something else and really show his acting, chops again. And we go back and say like, wow, he actually is a really good actor. He's a really good actor. You don't think even like somebody like George Clooney or Brad Pitt has been in some shitty projects before? Yeah, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because something else was, poorly written and they're the face, so we could not cast any blame on anybody but them. So it's like, easy. Unless an actor through 5 to 7 projects in a row they're in and they all were terrible performances, then you can say like, oh yeah, they're just crappy actors. Or if they were crappy actors, they wouldn't be hired as much as they've been. It just isn't fair. And his portrayal as Mutt, he was trained as a greaser kid, which he studied for in order to, probably portray a character like that from the 50s. And it's kind of like, snarky attitude and everything like that. I'm glad he wasn't doing no Fonzie type of stuff, but it's just like, it's like an attitude. It's kind of like the goth of the day, before goth was a thing. So he pulls this big tough guy act, the very macho dude. So yeah, so I know he's going for it. I think actually introducing Indiana with a kid of his own to better contrast with my, after I reviewed Last Crusade. The dynamic between Indiana and his father, you can now run parallels between him and his own kid and how he, because surprise, Mutt is actually Indiana's child by Marion Ravenwood. But of course, she never told him, but he finds out later. And it's like the dynamic, kind of swings because now he's looked like a, he sees at this point like a separation, like, oh, like, of course he can easily give his kid advice because this kid, doesn't want to be in school, and even though his mother pushing him to, and he just want to, fix up cars for a living. And Indiana points out, hey, like, if it's something you love to do, man, don't let anybody tell you any different. Until then, he realizes his kid's like, oh, you're going back to school. And it's like, so it's kind of like, he makes a snide comment at the end of the third act where, somewhere up there, your grandfather is laughing at me. And it's kind of, every kid eventually get a taste of their own medicine when they have their own kid of their own. It's pretty much like, behaving the same way like you behave when you're their age. It's kind of like there's some parallels here where like the son rebels against the father, same way, Indy was rebelling against his father. So at this point, Mutt meets up with Indy and points out that your friend Oxley, who was helped raising me with my mom, who is also missing, and he got this letter with some, as he called it, chicken scratch. But if you was helped being raised by Oxley and all this, supposedly been, like to this, fancy schools, learn all this different stuff, including fencing, you wouldn't call that chicken scratch. You would say what the language is. You just couldn't make out the sense it was trying to tell you. That's why he brought it to Indiana to kind of make sense of it for you. Even though you can read it, you don't understand it. I think that was kind of bizarre because, like, you wouldn't call it chicken scratch. I know you mentioned earlier how you went to the school for this kind of stuff, learning these different languages. You could at least, not call it chicken scratch. Anyway, So then they get ambushed by a couple of Russians who try to get them out of the malt shop parlor until like Mutt start a fight between some jocks and some other greasers, and the chaos allows these two to escape. They take a bike, Mutt's bike, to all around the neighborhood, eventually through this library, where they eventually like got between this library, which is kind of funny because before they drive off, I kind of like this. It's kind of funny to me where it's like, as they kind of sliding in and kind of tilt over in the middle of the library room, and there's one kid asks Indy about this particular subject that he's trying to study on, and in full teacher mode, it's like read this particular stuff, not that. Read this other typical this book, and stay out of the library. If you want to become a great archaeologist, you gotta stay out of the library. Really, kind of like contradicting himself from the previous film, whereas like he said like 70% of all archaeology is done in the library, research, and you telling them the polar opposite. I guess in my mind when I heard that, it's like, after the adventures he'd been on in the previous 3 films, he learned that, you got to get out there a little bit, get your hands dirty a little bit. But then they eventually figured out what the stuff, the writing is, and then he realized they got to go to Peru to find this conquistador's grave, Francisco de Orellana. And because Oxley was in Peru before some group of people picked him up, because he was doing crazy rambling, so the Peruvians put him into this prison cell where he's putting all these carvings, and that's where they realized they had to go to the gravesite of Francisco, where they find, they get attacked by some, weird protector tribe people that's ducking through these little holes and everything like that. It's creepy as all hell, though. Because I gotta admit, the atmosphere plays up the creepiness a bit. Give it a fair shake, because honestly, if you was right there, you'd be freaked the hell out too, where a person hiding amongst all the skulls and skeletons, wearing like a skeleton mask and just moving about in the shadows, perfect camouflage. It's like, obviously to catch your enemies by surprise and attack them, trying to prevent them from grave robbing, because they did have a sign out there. In all fairness, if you pay attention, even though it says like all trespassers will be shot, I think it would have been more accurate, trespassers will be killed, because these people don't have guns, they have blow darts. I guess that's what they meant. But thanks to Indy's quick thinking, he somebody tried to do a blow dart at Mutt, and then he comes out of nowhere, on the other hand, blows the right back into the guy's mouth, I guess choking him. They find the grave, and they find this crystal skull. And also you get, because Indy had has a phobia of snakes, Mutt gets like a phobia of scorpions, I guess. But then you learn about how you want a big one to sting you, if anything, because the small ones, has the most potent poison. Well, you're still getting poison, isn't you? So it's like, you might not feel, probably not get, dead, as quickly, but you'll probably, still feel an effect. Probably like a slow death and not like a quick one, but you was very nonchalantly about that. You should have had some kind of thing in the bag for some anti-venom or something. But they find the scroll, turns out to be magnetized, but they end up getting picked up by the Russians, where they find Oxley. He's, rambling, and they realize the skull has some kind of power to it that kind of opened up his mind, but Oxley stared at it too long, and it kind of, got him like that. But Spalko? Spalko tried to use it, but it's not working on her. Don't understand why. It's not like she any smarter than like Oxley, but I'm not sure. It's kind of weird. It's, why is it, has some kind of effect on him, but no effect on her when she tried to look at it. But she got Indy to look at it, and just long enough so he won't go, out of his mind like Oxley. But he is able to like start to get him a bit, which then realize that he doing this kind of like a hand waving motion, but for some reason nobody picked up that he had his hand like this, clearly in a writing motion, and he's drawing these pictographs that lead, if you compare it to like the map they're using, they figure out a way where they need to go. But you also see Miriam, which you find out that Miriam is Mutt's mother, and like lo and behold, he's the father. But Mutt doing some quick thinking, trying to have them all escape, but Miriam and Indiana land into some quicksand, but not traditional quicksand. This is like a, the slower variety. But Oxy, so out of his mind, Indiana, try to get him to go find help. It's like using poor choice of words, because what do you think that guy's going to try to go towards to? Who's the nearest people that he can probably possibly run to? Obviously the enemy. But also then Mutt sends like a stick to his mother to pull her out, but then I guess the stick might have broke or something, but he tosses Indiana a snake, and don't worry, it's not poisonous. It's not the point. Like, I'm pretty sure your mother should have brought up at the very least that he has a phobia of snakes. Probably not a good idea to toss him one just to pull him. And get this, when he gets pulled up, if you look at it, the snake is obviously fake. Of course, you can't pull on a real snake. But it's like, all of a sudden the snake is like, got super elasticity or something. Like a bungee cord. Because it's definitely stretching pretty thin. And it should be, if it's a real snake, it should be like breaking in half or something by the sheer weight of the man is being pulled and the two people that's holding on the other side. Okay. But then they get picked up by the Russians. But they try to make their escape again, thanks to Indy's quick thinking. And a fight ensues where, like, because they set it up earlier, Mutt is sword fighting against Spalko, who's a little bit better than he is and has more, years of experience underneath her belt. And this is where, like, I imagine this is definitely a spot where not only Shia LaBeouf messed up his rotary cuff shooting this scene, but also pulled a groin. And this is like his first injury ever he had on a set. But they crashed near this giant amount of, I don't know, it's fire ants or man-eating ants. I don't know what kind of ants these are. But I imagine there's, not imagine. I know there's, certain, deadly ants out in the world. but not the man-eating kind. But thanks to like the Crystal Skull, they, repelling the ants. And of course, you see like this. I don't want to fail to mention about the stupidity of how to look with Mutt Tarzaning himself to the vehicle along with these monkeys, one of which has like a goofy hair to resemble a greaser's hair, which is odd in of itself. But Mac joins up with Indy saying like, oh, like I'm a double agent for the CIA, even though he's full of crap. He's been leaving trackers for Spalko to follow, but they end up going through going down 3 waterfalls. I love Marion in this. I love Karen Ellen, and she has this like the most beautiful smile. Honestly, like I don't know, she raises like a bit of charm in this, and you can see like yes, this is like an ideal match for Indiana, more so than any other, and definitely better than that Temple of Doom chick. Because honestly, I do not like that woman, not on a personal level, just more like she was just annoying to hear. But Marion's the more level-headed one, and just man, it's almost like Princess Leia on a level of great female characters that isn't played like she's like perfect at everything, but also she's not a damsel. She knows her stuff and handle herself. Not on the same degree as probably like Indiana, but she doesn't need to be like, she won't be freaking out about her nails or whatever. She can match wits with Indy any day of the week. And it doesn't, deal with any of his BS. So they managed to go to this hidden temple, and they see all these different kinds of treasure about from all these different cultures, all in this one room before they get into the main room where they see 13 alien skeletons, one of which does not have a head on it, realizing the Crystal Skull is, because their skeletons are made out of crystal for some reason, but Spalko follows them after killing the indigenous tribe around that way, which is, problematic in of itself. But Jones realized, these are not just space explorers, but they're also archaeologists in their own right, because they're collecting all these different artifacts from the different civilizations on the planet. And Spalko, who's been doing all this because she wants to acquire so much knowledge so that she can like always be a step ahead of everybody and dominate the world. But once she, brings the crystal together, all the 13 skeletons you think in separate entities turns to be one entity, and they combine together. All the while, the whole place is spinning apart. It actually is like a hidden spaceship. Marion, Indiana, and Mac and Oxley escaped the room, but Mac, because he wanted to stay by for his treasure, Indiana tried to save him, but he's like, there's no way he can save me. He didn't realize that. He just winks at Indiana and just accept, his death. So the rest escape, and Noxley's not crazy no more because I guess he's away from that skull, so it's like, his sanity starts returning. But then the alien peers inside Spalko's mind, realizing the maliciousness in her spirit, I guess, and gives her exactly what she wants. all the knowledge that she wants, but it's too much for her, so she combusts. And then a spaceship, leaves their plane of existence. Then everything all ends with Mary and Indiana getting married. And Indiana becomes the associate dean of the university. And of course, people probably thrilled the fact that, oh, you see like Indiana's hat and Musk picking it up. It's like, oh my God, please don't be. And then it's like, the Indiana grabs the hat from him. It's like, not so fast, kid. And then the movie ends. Yeah, it's not good. But I can see what they was going for in certain situations here. Sparkle, I don't think it was like a bad villain, and the motivation isn't terrible because like previous films we're dealing with like supernatural stuff, and we're accepting the Ark of the Covenant. We're accepting the Kali Ma of it all. We're more than accepting to see like the Holy Grail and healing properties. So I'm not gonna knock Crystal Skull for a villain who wants to acquire the sci-fi stuff in order to dominate the world the way Hitler wanted to get all this occult stuff to dominate the world. So like, I can see that, and the fact that it's during like the 50s where the space race was like a big topic on mine, and so the sci-fi stuff was like all the rage, and dealing with like aliens and like otherworldly beings, that makes sense, because you can't keep playing like the same beat all the time, because then people will be complaining about that. So I can't really knock it for that. I don't know. Maybe this movie at the very least probably needed an extra rewrite or look over before they put it out into the theaters for people to see. Maybe. I'm not sure, what was going on in Lucas and Spielberg's mind at that time. But I cannot completely hate it. It's bad. Probably won't return to it again because it's been a long time since I've seen Crystal Skull. Honestly, I think it's probably like third, maybe fourth time seeing it since it came out. Probably won't ever return to it ever again. But I can understand somewhat of what they was trying to do. But yeah, that was Crystal Skull. Wasn't gonna be a long review. It was pretty much going through certain things about what worked this time. Or I won't say this time, but like after so many years, and looking on it in like while my emotions not too close to it, I can look at it and say like, okay, this worked, this worked, this worked, this did not work, this did not work, this did not work, this did not work, this worked, this worked. Or at least I can see where you was coming from, but it just did not pull it off. So if you've seen Crystal Skull recently, and it's been some time, check it out on Disney Plus. You can come back, leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know, like, if you're seeing certain things where it's like, okay, here's what worked for me, but this is why it still does not work, blah, blah, blah. You can leave a comment and let me know what you guys think, because, it's like, especially after so many years since the Crystal Skull, we had so many other horror films. This looked tame by comparison, honestly. Like, after, like, BVS, I mean, it's like, or... like the Twilight films. Like, compare this to the Twilight films, Crystal Skull is like a walk in a freaking park. Honestly. At least not all the Twilight films, like, because obviously that's not a fair comparison, because at least you got only one Crystal Skull. But, like, any one of those Twilight films, compare that to Crystal Skull. Crystal Skull, I can watch that, you know, a handful more times than I could ever do so with any of these like other like bad films. I can easily point out, like, you know, the Twilight stuff just off the top of my head. But anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow for more FF16 and Street Fighter 6, and I'll try to maybe squeeze in some Destiny too, but don't hold me to that. Depending on how like tired I am after work, but I want to make sure I at least get at least a couple of games in. But Saturday I'll be reviewing doing a spoiler review for the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, as well as No Hard Feelings, the Jennifer Lawrence raunchy comedy film, which is getting some good reviews. So I'm going to check that out as well and do like a back-to-back spoiler review for that. As well as hopefully by that point I'll have the second season of X-Men Evolution out and ready for a review for that as well. So I'll see you guys later. Take care. Like I said, like, you know, let's see like how many likes this video can get, despite it being Crystal Skull. But check out my Emma Frost comic review that we'll have on YouTube by this point. And let me know what you think of Emma Frost as an X-Men character in of it herself. So anyway, I'm trying to get some rest. I gotta get to work in the morning, but I'll see you all soon. Take care. Have a great night. I'll see y'all later. Peace.